The rain had been falling for 3 days straight over the small town of Millbrook, nestled in the forgotten corners of rural Tennessee. Anna Moreno stood in the doorway of the community center, her worn dress clinging to her thin frame, her dark hair plastered against her pale cheeks. She was 24 years old, but the weight in her eyes made her look like someone who had lived through 100 winters. Her hands trembled as she clutched a crumpled piece of paper, the rejection letter, that had just been handed to her by Mrs. Patterson, the head of the town council. The words still echoed in her mind, sharp as broken glass. "You cannot serve this community if you cannot even read the documents we need you to sign." Anna had applied for a position at the local food bank, hoping to help distribute meals to families struggling just like hers. She had worked there as a volunteer for 2 years, organizing donations, comforting children, learning the names of every single person who walked through those doors. But none of that mattered now. None of it counted because she could not read. Anna had hidden her secret for as long as she could remember. Growing up in a household where survival meant working the fields from dawn until dusk, school had been a luxury her family could never afford. Her mother had passed away when Anna was 7, leaving her father to raise 5 children alone. Books were not part of their world. Letters were foreign symbols that danced mockingly on pages she could never understand. She had learned to navigate life through memory, through listening, through the kindness of strangers who read menus aloud or filled out forms on her behalf. But today, her secret had been exposed. Mrs. Patterson had handed her a simple form and asked her to read the first paragraph aloud. Anna had stared at the paper, her heart pounding, her throat closing. The silence had stretched for an eternity before Mrs. Patterson sighed and shook her head. The whispers had started immediately. Within hours, the entire town would know. Anna stepped out into the rain, letting the cold water wash over her face. She had nowhere to go. Her father had passed away 2 years ago, and her siblings had scattered across the country, chasing dreams that Millbrook could never provide. She lived alone in a small cabin at the edge of town, surviving on odd jobs and the vegetables she grew in her garden. But now, even that fragile existence felt threatened. How could she stay in a place where everyone would look at her with pity, or worse, with contempt? She walked through the empty streets, past the shuttered general store, past the church with its peeling white paint, past the old oak tree where she used to sit as a child and watch the clouds drift by. Her feet carried her without direction, guided only by the desperate need to escape. By the time she reached the bus station at the edge of town, she had made her decision. She would leave Millbrook. She would start over somewhere else, somewhere no one knew her shame. The bus station was nothing more than a wooden bench beneath a rusted awning. A single fluorescent light flickered overhead, casting pale shadows on the cracked concrete. Anna sat down and counted the few dollars in her pocket. It was barely enough for a one-way ticket to the next town over, a place called Havenwood that she had heard mentioned once or twice. She did not know what awaited her there, but anything seemed better than staying here. The bus arrived 40 minutes later, its headlights cutting through the darkness like twin beacons of hope. Anna climbed aboard, found a seat near the back, and pressed her forehead against the cold window. As the bus pulled away from Millbrook, she watched the familiar landmarks disappear into the night, the water tower with its faded paint, the gas station where old Mr. Henderson used to give her free coffee on cold mornings, the road that led to her cabin, now empty and dark. She did not cry. She had learned long ago that tears changed nothing. Instead, she closed her eyes and tried to imagine what her new life might look like. Perhaps she would find work in a restaurant, washing dishes or cleaning tables. Perhaps she would meet someone kind who would not judge her for the things she could not do. Perhaps, just perhaps, she would finally learn to read. The bus ride took 2 hours. When Anna stepped off in Havenwood, the rain had stopped, but the streets were still slick with water. The town was larger than Millbrook, with brick buildings lining the main street and lampposts casting warm pools of light on the sidewalks. A clock tower rose in the distance, its face glowing softly against the night sky. Anna stood on the corner, her small bag clutched against her chest, and tried to get her bearings. She needed to find shelter for the night. Her eyes scanned the storefronts until they landed on a small diner called Rosie's, its windows fogged with warmth from inside. A help wanted sign hung in the corner of the glass. Anna took a deep breath and pushed through the door. The diner was nearly empty. A few customers sat at the counter nursing cups of coffee and plates of pie. Behind the register stood a woman in her 50s with silver hair pulled back in a bun and kind eyes that crinkled when she smiled. She looked up as Anna entered and immediately noticed the exhaustion written across the young woman's face. "Honey, you look like you have been through something," the woman said gently. "Come sit down, let me get you something warm." Anna hesitated, acutely aware of how little money she had. The woman seemed to read her thoughts and waved her hand dismissively. "On the house," she said. "Anyone who walks in here looking that lost deserves a hot meal." Anna slid into a booth near the window, and within minutes, a steaming bowl of soup and a basket of bread appeared before her. She ate slowly, savoring every bite, trying to quiet the storm of anxiety that churned in her stomach. The woman who introduced herself as Rosie sat down across from her and asked no questions. She simply waited, offering the gift of patient silence. Finally, Anna spoke. "I saw your sign. The help wanted one. I can work hard. I can clean, organize, do anything you need. I just need a chance." Rosie studied her for a long moment. "Where are you from, sweetheart?" "A small town south of here. I had to leave. There was nothing for me there anymore." Rosie nodded slowly as if she understood more than Anna had said. "I could use someone in the mornings," she replied. "Prep work mostly. Cutting vegetables, setting tables, helping with the early rush. It does not pay much, but I have a room upstairs that I rent out sometimes. Nothing fancy, but it is warm and dry." Anna felt something loosen in her chest, a knot of fear that had been tightening for hours. "Thank you," she whispered. "You do not know what this means to me." Rosie patted her hand. "We all need help sometimes. No shame in that." That night Anna slept in the small room above the diner, wrapped in a quilt that smelled of lavender and old memories. Through the window she could see the clock tower and the quiet streets of Havenwood. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to feel something that resembled hope. She did not know that her arrival had already been noticed. She did not know that in a mansion on the hill overlooking the town, a man sat in his study, reviewing reports from his security team. A new face in Havenwood, a young woman with no connections, no family, no past that anyone could trace. The new mayor of Havenwood, a man named Vincent Castellano, made it his business to know everything about everyone who entered his territory. Vincent was not merely a politician. Behind the polished facade of public service lay an empire built on shadows and steel. His family had controlled the region for 3 generations, their influence extending far beyond what ordinary citizens could imagine. He had taken the position of mayor not for the title, but for the power it provided to protect his operations while maintaining an image of legitimacy. He studied the photograph his men had taken of Anna as she stepped off the bus. Something about her caught his attention. Perhaps it was the determination in her posture despite the obvious exhaustion. Perhaps it was the way she held her small bag close to her heart, as if it contained everything precious she had left in the world. Or perhaps it was simply the fact that she was an anomaly, an unknown variable in a town where he controlled every equation. "Find out who she is," he told his assistant without looking up. "Everything there is to know." The assistant nodded and disappeared into the shadows. Vincent leaned back in his chair and gazed out the window at the town below. Havenwood had been his responsibility since his father's passing 5 years ago. Every street, every business, every family fell under his protection. It was a burden he had not asked for, but had accepted with the same cold efficiency that defined everything he did. He did not yet understand why this stranger intrigued him, but he had learned to trust his instincts, and his instincts told him that Ana Moreno was going to change something. He just did not know what. The next morning, Anna woke before dawn and began her work at Rosie's. She scrubbed floors, chopped onions until her eyes watered, and arranged napkins with careful precision. The Giwai rhythm of labor was familiar and comforting. It kept her mind occupied, leaving no room for the grief and shame that lurked at the edges of her thoughts. By mid-morning, the diner had filled with regulars. Anna moved between tables, refilling coffee cups and clearing plates. She listened to the conversations around her, piecing together fragments of information about her new home. Havenwood, she learned, had experienced a remarkable transformation in recent years. The streets were clean, the schools were well funded, and crime had all but disappeared. The new mayor, one customer remarked, say what you will about his background, but he gets things done. Anna filed the comment away, curious but too focused on her own survival to give it much thought. She had more immediate concerns, like earning enough money to buy a new pair of shoes and finding a way to navigate a world built on written words. That evening, after the diner closed, Rosie handed Anna her first day's wages and offered to show her around town. They walked together through the quiet streets, past the library and the town hall, past the elementary school where children's artwork decorated the windows. Rosie pointed out landmarks and shared stories about Havenwood's history, her voice warm with affection for the place she had called home for 30 years. As they passed the town hall, a black car pulled up to the curb. The doors opened, and several men in suits emerged, surrounding a figure who stepped out last. Even from a distance, Anna could feel the shift in atmosphere. People on the street paused, nodded respectfully, and gave the group a wide berth. "That is Mayor Castellano," Rosie said quietly. "He is a private man. Keeps to himself mostly. But he has done more for this town than anyone else in memory." Anna watched as the mayor climbed the steps to the town hall, his movements precise and controlled. For a brief moment, he turned, and his eyes swept across the street. They landed on Anna, and she felt a jolt of something she could not name. Recognition? Warning? Interest? Before she could process the sensation, he had disappeared inside the building. "Come on," Rosie said, tugging her arm gently. "Getting cold out here." Anna followed, but she could not shake the feeling that something significant had just happened. She had come to Havenwood seeking anonymity, a place to disappear and start over. But in that single glance, the mayor had seen her, truly seen her. And Anna understood, with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, that her life was about to change in ways she could never have predicted. Check if you are already subscribed to this channel. If you are someone who appreciates stories that touch the heart and remind us that second chances exist even in the darkest moments, this is the place for you. Subscribe now and join thousands of people who have found hope in these narratives. The weeks that followed were the most peaceful Anna had known in years. She fell into the rhythm of Havenwood with surprising ease, her days marked by the simple routine of work and rest. Rosie proved to be more than just an employer. She became a friend, a confidant, and something close to a mother figure. In the quiet hours after closing, they would sit together in the kitchen, sharing cups of tea and stories of their pasts. Anna learned that Rosie had lost her husband to illness a decade ago and had poured her grief into the diner, transforming it into a gathering place for the community. Rosie learned that Anna had grown up poor but proud, and that she had left her hometown because of a shame she could not bring herself to name. "You do not have to tell me everything," Rosie said one evening. "We all have chapters we do not read aloud. What matters is who you are now." Anna felt her eyes sting with unshed tears. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." Rosie simply smiled and pushed another slice of pie toward her. As the days passed, Anna began to explore Havenwood more thoroughly. She discovered a small park by the river where ducks gathered in the morning, a bakery that made pastries so perfect they seemed to melt on the tongue, and a second-hand bookshop filled with volumes she could only admire from the outside. Each time she passed the shop, she felt a familiar pang of longing. The books sat there like locked treasures, their secrets forever hidden from her. One afternoon, while running errands for Rosie, Anna noticed a flyer posted on a community board. Free adult literacy classes, it read. Tuesdays and Thursdays at the community center. All welcome. Her heart began to race. She stood frozen before the board, reading the words over and over with the painstaking slowness of someone who had taught herself to recognize letters, but never to string them into meaning. Could she do this? Could she finally learn the skill that had eluded her all her life? The fear was suffocating. She imagined sitting in a room full of strangers, exposing her deepest inadequacy, stumbling over words that children could read with ease. But beneath the fear was something stronger, hope. The same hope that had carried her onto that bus, that had led her to Rosie's door, that had kept her moving forward when everything inside her wanted to give up. She memorized the address and walked away without taking the flyer. That same afternoon, Vincent Castellano received a report from his security team. The file on Ana Moreno was thin, almost frustratingly so. Born in rural Tennessee, raised in poverty, never married, no criminal record. She had worked various odd jobs throughout her 20s, never staying in one place for long. The most notable detail was what the report did not contain: any record of formal education beyond elementary school. Vincent read the file twice, then set it aside. A woman with no connections, no resources, no support system. She was exactly the kind of person who fell through society's cracks, invisible and forgotten. And yet here she was in his town, working in a diner, carrying herself with a quiet dignity that belied her circumstances. He found himself thinking about her more often than he expected. During meetings at the town hall, his mind would wander to the image of her standing on the street corner, rain-soaked and determined. During dinners with business associates, he would lose track of conversations, distracted by questions he could not answer. Who was she? What had driven her to leave everything behind? He told himself it was merely caution, the vigilance required of someone in his position. But deep down he knew it was something more, something he had not felt in years, perhaps ever. A week later, Vincent made a decision. He would meet Ana Moreno, not as the mayor but as a private citizen. He would learn the truth about her, not from reports and surveillance but from her own lips, and he would determine whether she was a threat to be neutralized or something else entirely. He found his opportunity on a quiet Tuesday evening. The diner was nearly empty when he entered, the bell above the door chiming softly. Anna looked up from the table she was wiping and froze. The mayor of Havenwood stood before her, dressed not in his usual suit, but in a simple sweater and jeans, looking almost approachable. "Good evening," he said, his voice low and smooth. "I have heard remarkable things about the pie here." Anna recovered quickly, her professional instincts taking over. "Please, have a seat. I will get you a menu." "No need," Vincent replied, sliding into a booth. "Just pie and coffee, whatever you recommend." Anna nodded and disappeared into the kitchen, her hands trembling slightly as she cut a slice of Rosie's famous apple pie. When she returned, she found Vincent watching her with an expression she could not decipher. "You are new in town," he observed. "Yes, a few weeks now. And how are you finding Havenwood?" Anna set the plate before him, careful to keep her voice steady. "It is a good place. The people are kind." Vincent took a bite of pie and nodded approvingly. "It is my job to ensure they stay that way. I am Vincent Castellano. I believe we saw each other briefly on the street last week." Anna felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Yes, I remember. I am Ana Moreno." "I know," Vincent said simply. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Anna did not know how to respond. She had expected the mayor of a small town to be a distant figure, concerned with politics and public appearances. Instead, she found herself facing a man whose gaze seemed to pierce through every defense she had built. "I make it my business to know who enters my town," Vincent continued, his tone softening almost imperceptibly. "Not to intrude, but to protect. Havenwood has faced challenges in the past. I have worked hard to create stability here." Anna nodded slowly. "I am not here to cause trouble. I just needed a fresh start." Vincent studied her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled, a genuine smile that transformed his severe features into something almost warm. "Fresh starts are something I understand," he said. "This town has given me one as well." They talked for another hour, long after the pie was finished and the coffee had grown cold. Vincent asked careful questions about her past, and Anna found herself answering with surprising honesty. She spoke about Millbrook, about her father, about the garden she used to tend, and the dreams she had never dared to pursue. She did not mention her illiteracy, but she sensed that Vincent knew there was something she was holding back. When he finally rose to leave, he placed a generous amount of money on the table. "For the pie," he said, "and for the conversation. I hope we can do this again." Anna watched him walk out into the night, her mind churning with questions. She did not understand why the mayor of Havenwood had sought her out, or why he had treated her with such unexpected kindness. But she knew that something had shifted between them, an invisible thread that now connected her fate to his. In the days that followed, Vincent found himself returning to the diner with increasing frequency. Sometimes he came for breakfast, other times for late-night coffee. He always chose a booth where he could watch Anna work, noting the grace with which she moved, the patience she showed with difficult customers, the way her face lit up when she laughed at one of Rosie's jokes. Rosie noticed the pattern and raised an eyebrow at Anna one evening. "The mayor seems quite taken with you," she observed. Anna shook her head dismissively. "He is just being friendly." Rosie chuckled. "Honey, that man has not been friendly with anyone in the 10 years I have known him. Whatever this is, it is not just friendliness." Anna did not know how to respond. The truth was, she found herself looking forward to Vincent's visits more than she wanted to admit. He was guarded and intense, but beneath the armor she glimpsed something vulnerable, something that resonated with her own hidden wounds. One evening, as Vincent was preparing to leave, he paused at the door. "There is an event this weekend," he said, "a charity gala at the community center. I would be honored if you would attend as my guest." Anna's heart skipped. "A gala? I do not have anything suitable to wear." "That can be arranged," Vincent replied. "Say yes." Anna hesitated, every instinct warning her against getting too close to this powerful, mysterious man. But another part of her, the part that had fled Millbrook in search of something more, whispered that this might be exactly the opportunity she needed. "Yes," she said finally, "I would like that." Vincent smiled, that rare, genuine smile. "I will send a car for you Saturday at 7. As he disappeared into the night, Anna leaned against the counter and tried to steady her breathing. She had come to Havenwood to escape her past, to build a quiet life free from judgment and shame. Instead, she had somehow caught the attention of the most powerful man in town. A man whose true nature she was only beginning to understand. A man who, unbeknownst to her, was already putting plans in motion that would change both their lives forever. The threads of fate were weaving together, invisible but unbreakable. And Anna Moreno, the illiterate girl from Millbrook, who had been told she had nothing to offer the world, was about to discover that her story was only just beginning. The night of the gala arrived wrapped in velvet darkness and the scent of autumn leaves. Anna stood before the small mirror in her room above the diner, barely recognizing the woman who stared back at her. True to his word, Vincent had sent not just a car, but a dress, a breathtaking gown of deep emerald green that hugged her curves and made her skin glow like porcelain. Rosie had helped her with her hair, pinning it up in an elegant twist that revealed the graceful line of her neck. A simple necklace, and earrings completed the look, borrowed from Rosie's own collection of treasures saved from her wedding day. "You look like a princess," Rosie whispered, her eyes glistening with emotion. "Go out there and shine." Anna hugged her tightly, drawing strength from the older woman's warmth. Whatever happened tonight, she knew she had at least one person in her corner. The car arrived precisely at 7, a sleek black vehicle that drew curious stares from the few people still on the street. The driver opened the door for her with formal courtesy, and Anna slid inside, her heart pounding against her ribs. The community center had been transformed for the occasion. Thousands of tiny lights sparkled from the ceiling like captive stars, and flowers cascaded from every surface, in arrangements that must have cost more than Anna had earned in her entire life. Men in tailored suits and women in designer gowns circulated through the room, their laughter and conversation creating a symphony of privilege that made Anna acutely aware of her origins. But then Vincent appeared at her side, and suddenly none of it mattered. He was dressed in a midnight blue suit that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders and the sharp angles of his face. When he looked at her, his eyes darkened with an emotion she could not name. "You are stunning," he said simply. Anna felt warmth flood her cheeks. "Thank you. For everything." Vincent offered his arm and she took it, allowing him to guide her through the crowd. He introduced her to politicians, business owners and community leaders, never once treating her as anything less than his equal. When people asked about her background, he deflected with smooth charm, steering conversations toward neutral topics. As the evening progressed, Anna began to relax. The champagne helped, as did Vincent's steady presence at her side. He was attentive without being possessive, protective without being controlling. He seemed to genuinely enjoy her company, asking her opinions on everything from the music to the flower arrangements. During a quiet moment near the window, Vincent turned to face her. "There is something I need to tell you," he said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "About who I am." Anna's breath caught. She had sensed from the beginning that Vincent was more than what he appeared, that shadows lurked beneath his polished surface. Now, standing so close that she could smell his cologne, she felt the weight of his secrets, pressing against the air between them. "I know you have questions," Vincent continued. "I know there are rumors about my family, about how I came to power in this town. Some of them are true. My family has operated outside the law for generations. I have done things that most people would condemn. But I need you to understand something." He paused, his eyes searching hers with an intensity that made her tremble. "Everything I have done to protect the people I care about. This town. These people, they are my responsibility. And now somehow you have become part of that circle." Anna did not pull away. She did not run, as every rational instinct told her to do. Instead, she reached up and placed her hand against his cheek, feeling the rough stubble beneath her palm. "I know what it is like to be judged for things beyond your control," she whispered. "I know what it is like to carry secrets that feel too heavy to bear. Whatever you are, whatever you have done, I am not afraid." Vincent closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. For a moment the mask slipped, and she saw the exhaustion beneath, the loneliness of a man who had spent his entire life carrying burdens alone. Then the moment passed, and he straightened, his composure restored. "Dance with me," he said, and it was not a question. They moved together across the floor, their bodies fitting together as if they had been designed for this purpose. The other guests watched with undisguised curiosity, whispers rippling through the crowd. But Anna barely noticed. She was lost in the sensation of Vincent's arms around her, the steady beat of his heart against her chest, the way he held her as if she were something precious and fragile. When the song ended, they remained together, reluctant to break the spell. It was only when Vincent's phone buzzed insistently that reality intruded. "I need to take this," he murmured apologetically. "Wait for me?" Anna nodded, watching as he stepped away to answer the call. She drifted toward the refreshment table, accepting a glass of water from a server and trying to process everything that had just happened. "So you are the mysterious new woman in the mayor's life." Anna turned to find a woman standing beside her, tall and striking with platinum blonde hair and eyes like chips of ice. She was dressed in a gown of blood-red silk that clung to her body like a second skin, and she regarded Anna with an expression of thinly veiled hostility. "I am sorry," Anna replied cautiously. "I am Veronica Cole," the woman said. "Vincent and I have history. Ancient history, one might say, but history nonetheless." Anna felt a chill run down her spine. "It is nice to meet you." Veronica's lips curved into a smile that held no warmth. A word of advice from one woman to another. Vincent Castellano is not someone you want to get close to. He destroys everything he touches. Everyone he loves ends up hurt, or worse. "I appreciate your concern," Anna said carefully, "but I can make my own decisions." Veronica laughed, a sharp sound that cut through the ambient noise. "Of course you can. But do not say I did not warn you. The last woman who thought she could save him, she disappeared, just vanished one night, and no one ever spoke of her again." Before Anna could respond, Vincent reappeared at her side. His eyes flicked to Veronica, and something dangerous flickered in their depths. "Veronica," he said flatly, "I did not expect to see you here." The blonde woman shrugged elegantly. "I go where the interesting things happen, and tonight things are certainly interesting." She cast one last meaningful look at Anna before gliding away into the crowd. Anna watched her go, her heart pounding with a fear she could not entirely explain. "Do not let her get to you," Vincent said quietly. "Veronica has her own agenda. She enjoys causing trouble." "Who was the woman she mentioned?" Anna asked. "The one who disappeared." Vincent's jaw tightened. "That is a story for another time. Right now, I want to enjoy what remains of this evening with you." He took her hand and led her back to the dance floor, but the magic of earlier had been tainted. Anna could not shake Veronica's words, the implications they carried. What had she gotten herself into? Who was Vincent Castellano, really? As they swayed together beneath the glittering lights, Anna made a silent promise to herself. She would uncover the truth, no matter what it took, and she would not become another woman who disappeared into the shadows of Vincent's past. The evening ended with Vincent escorting her back to the car. Before she climbed inside, he caught her hand. "I know tonight raised more questions than it answered," he said softly. "I want you to know that I will tell you everything when the time is right. I just need you to trust me a little longer." Anna looked into his eyes and saw something that made her decision easier than it should have been. Fear. Genuine, raw fear, not for himself, but for her. "I trust you," she whispered. Vincent kissed her hand, a gesture so tender that it made her heart ache. Then he stepped back and the car door closed between them. As the vehicle pulled away from the community center, Anna pressed her palm against the window, watching Vincent's figure grow smaller in the distance. She did not know what tomorrow would bring. She did not know if her trust was misplaced or merited. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She was falling for Vincent Castellano, and there was no turning back. Right now, pause for a moment and type in the comments, "I believe everyone deserves a second chance." This simple sentence has the power to remind someone who is going through difficult times that hope still exists. Leave your comment now and become part of this community of hearts. The days following the gala brought a strange mixture of joy and unease. Anna continued her work at the diner, but her thoughts were constantly drawn to Vincent and the mysteries that surrounded him. He visited, less frequently now, claiming business obligations that kept him occupied until late at night. But when he did appear, his attention was absolute. His gaze filled with an intensity that made her feel like the only person in the world. They shared quiet meals together, long conversations that stretched into the small hours of the morning. Vincent spoke of his childhood, of a father who had taught him that power was the only protection against a hostile world. He spoke of the sacrifices he had made to keep Havenwood safe, the deals he had struck with dangerous people, the lines he had crossed and could never uncross. Anna listened without judgment, recognizing in his words the same desperate survival instinct that had driven her own choices. They were both products of their circumstances, shaped by forces beyond their control. The difference was that Vincent had found a way to master his fate, while Anna was still struggling to escape hers. One evening, as they sat together in the empty diner, Anna found the courage to share her own secret. "There is something you should know about me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Something I have never told anyone." Vincent reached across the table and took her hand. "Whatever it is, it will not change how I feel about you." Anna took a deep breath. "I cannot read. Not really. I can recognize some words, pick up meaning from context, but I never learned properly. Where I come from, education was a luxury we could not afford." She waited for the disgust, the pity, the dismissal. Instead, Vincent simply squeezed her hand tighter. "That explains a few things," he said gently. "The way you avoid menus, the way you memorize orders rather than writing them down." I noticed, but I did not want to pry. Anna felt tears prick her eyes. Back home they rejected me because of it, said I was not fit to help my own community. That is why I left. Vincent's expression hardened, not with judgment toward her, but with anger toward those who had hurt her. They were fools, he said firmly. Your worth is not measured by what you can read. It is measured by who you are, by your kindness, your strength, your resilience. And those qualities, they are remarkable. He paused, then continued with quiet determination. There are literacy programs here in Havenwood. I will arrange private tutoring for you, the best teachers available. If you want to learn, I will make sure you have every opportunity. Anna could not hold back the tears any longer. They streamed down her cheeks as years of shame and frustration finally found release. Why? She asked. Why are you doing all this for me? Vincent leaned forward, his eyes burning with conviction. Because you deserve it. Because somewhere along the way, you became important to me. Because I look at you and see someone who has been fighting alone for far too long, and I want to be the person who stands beside you. In that moment, Anna understood something profound. Vincent Castellano, for all his power and all his darkness, was not her enemy. He was her ally, perhaps even her salvation. The walls she had built around her heart began to crumble, brick by brick, leaving her exposed and vulnerable in ways she had never allowed herself to be. Vincent stood and pulled her to her feet, wrapping his arms around her in an embrace that felt like coming home. Anna buried her face against his chest and let herself cry, releasing all the pain and loneliness she had carried for so long. They stayed that way for what felt like hours, two broken people finding wholeness in each other's arms. When they finally pulled apart, something had fundamentally shifted between them. I want to show you something, Vincent said. Tomorrow night. Something that will help you understand why I am the way I am. Anna nodded, trusting him completely despite every warning signal in her mind. Whatever awaited her, she would face it. For him, for herself, for the future that was slowly taking shape before her eyes. The next evening, Vincent arrived in a different car than usual, a nondescript sedan that blended into traffic. He was dressed casually, looking more like an ordinary man than the powerful figure she had come to know. Where are we going? Anna asked as she climbed inside. To meet someone important, Vincent replied. Someone who has been waiting to meet you. They drove in comfortable silence through the winding roads outside Havenwood, past farmland and forest, until they reached a modest house set back from the main road. Smoke curled from the chimney, and warm light glowed from the windows. Vincent helped her out of the car and led her up the path to the front door. Before he could knock, it swung open to reveal an elderly woman with silver hair and a face that held echoes of Vincent's own features. "Mama," Vincent said softly, "I brought someone to meet you." The woman's eyes, sharp despite her age, swept over Anna with keen interest. "So this is the one," she murmured. "Come in, both of you. The coffee is already on." The interior of the house was warm and welcoming, filled with the scent of baking bread and the evidence of a life well lived. Photographs covered every surface, showing generations of the Castellano family in happier times. Vincent's mother, whose name was Elena, ushered them into the kitchen and poured coffee into ceramic cups painted with cheerful flowers. She watched Anna with an expression that seemed to see straight through to her soul. "My son does not bring people here," Elena said finally. "In 30 years, you are only the second woman to sit at this table." Anna glanced at Vincent, who had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. "I wanted her to know the real me," he explained. "Not the mayor, not the businessman, just me." Elena nodded slowly. "That is good. That is progress." She turned back to Anna, her gaze softening. "He has told me about you, about your courage, your kindness, about the way you see past his walls. Do you know what a rare gift that is?" Anna shook her head, unsure how to respond. "My son has been alone for a very long time," Elena continued. "After his father passed, he built an empire, but he forgot how to be human. He forgot that power without love is just another kind of prison." She reached across the table and took Anna's hands in her own, her grip surprisingly strong. "I'm not asking you to fix him. That is not your job. But if you care for him, truly care, then I ask you to be patient. Help him remember who he could be, not who circumstances forced him to become." Anna felt the weight of Elena's words settle into her heart. "I will try," she promised. Elena smiled, and suddenly the resemblance to Vincent was unmistakable. "That is all any of us can do." They stayed for dinner, and Anna learned more about the Castellano family than she had in all her conversations with Vincent. She learned about his older brother, who had died young, and the grief that had shaped his father's remaining years. She learned about Elena's own sacrifices, the choices she had made to protect her children in a world that showed no mercy to the weak. By the time they left, the moon was high in the sky and the stars burned cold and bright overhead. Vincent was quiet during the drive back, lost in thoughts that Anna could only guess at. "Thank you," she said finally, breaking the silence, "for sharing that with me." Vincent glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "My mother does not approve of the life I have built. She thinks I have lost my way, but when she looks at you she sees hope. She sees the possibility that I might still become the man she raised me to be." "And what do you see?" Anna asked. Vincent was silent for a long moment. "When I look at you, I see a mirror. Someone who has been broken by the world but refused to stay broken. Someone who chooses kindness even when cruelty would be easier. Someone who makes me want to be better, not because I have to, but because I want to deserve you." Anna felt her heart swell with emotion. She reached across the console and took his hand, intertwining their fingers. "Maybe we can save each other," she whispered. Vincent lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a gentle kiss against her knuckles. "Maybe we already have," he replied. That night, Anna lay awake in her room above the diner, staring at the ceiling and thinking about everything that had changed since she arrived in Havenwood. She had come here as a refugee from her own shame, expecting nothing more than a chance to survive. Instead, she had found something she never dared to hope for, a place where she belonged, a purpose worth pursuing, and a love that defied all logic. But she was not naive enough to believe that happiness came without cost. Veronica's warning still echoed in her mind, and she knew that Vincent's world was filled with dangers she could not yet comprehend. Somewhere out there, enemies lurked in the shadows, waiting for the moment to strike. Whatever came next, Anna promised herself she would be ready. For Vincent, for herself, for the fragile future they were building together. The storm was coming, but she had weathered storms before. The attack came without warning on a crisp October morning. Anna was alone in the diner, preparing for the breakfast rush, when the front door burst open with a violence that sent glass shattering across the floor. 3 men stormed inside, their faces hidden behind dark masks, their movements professional and precise. Before Anna could scream, one of them grabbed her and pressed a cloth against her face. The world spun, colors bleeding into darkness, and the last thing she heard before losing consciousness was a voice speaking into a phone. "We have her. Tell Castellano his weakness is now ours." She woke in a cold, dark room that smelled of rust and mold. Her hands were bound behind her back, and her head throbbed with a pain that made thinking difficult. Slowly, carefully, she assessed her surroundings. The room was small, probably a basement or storage space. A single bulb hung from the ceiling, casting weak light that barely reached the corners. There was no furniture except the chair she was tied to, no windows, no obvious means of escape. Fear clawed at her throat, but Anna forced herself to breathe, to think. Panic would not save her. Only calm, clear thinking would give her any chance of survival. Time passed in increments she could not measure. It might have been hours or minutes before the door finally opened and a figure stepped inside. It was Veronica Cole. The blonde woman was dressed impeccably, her expression one of cold triumph as she circled Anna like a predator assessing prey. "I warned you," Veronica said softly. "I told you that getting close to Vincent would end badly. You should have listened." Anna met her gaze without flinching. "What do you want?" Veronica laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. "What I have always wanted. What Vincent took from me when he chose his empire over. Our future. I want him to suffer. And you, my dear, are the instrument of that suffering. She leaned close, her perfume cloying in the stale air. You see, Vincent has many enemies, but none who know his weaknesses like I do. When we were together, I saw the man beneath the mask. I saw his capacity for love, and I saw how that love could be used against him. When I heard he had fallen for some nobody from a backwater town, I knew my opportunity had finally arrived. Anna's mind raced. Veronica was the threat Vincent had been trying to protect her from, the danger he had sensed but could not name. All this time the enemy had been hiding in plain sight. "He will come for me," Anna said, her voice steady despite her fear. "I am counting on it," Veronica replied with a smile. "In fact, I have already sent him the invitation. The question is whether he will arrive in time to save you, or whether he will find only what remains." She straightened and walked toward the door. "Get comfortable. It is going to be a long night." The door slammed shut, and Anna was alone again in the darkness. But this time the fear that had threatened to overwhelm her was replaced by something stronger: determination. She had not survived her father's death, the rejection of her community, and the long road to Havenwood only to die in some forgotten basement at the hands of a jealous woman. She began to work at her bonds, ignoring the pain as the rope cut into her wrists. The knots were tight, but not impossible. Whoever had tied them had been more focused on speed than security. Minutes stretched into an eternity as she twisted and pulled, her fingers growing numb from the effort. But gradually, impossibly, she felt the rope begin to loosen. Meanwhile, across town, Vincent Castellano received the message that shattered his carefully constructed world. The envelope arrived at his office, delivered by a courier who disappeared before anyone could question him. Inside was a single photograph of Hannah, bound and unconscious, and a note written in handwriting he recognized with a chill of horror. "She has until midnight. Come alone to the old warehouse on Miller Road. Bring the evidence you have on the Santino operation. Fail to comply, and she dies." Vincent stared at the note, his hands trembling with a fury that threatened to consume him. Veronica. Of course it was Veronica. He should have dealt with her years ago, should have recognized that her obsession ran deeper than wounded pride. But there was no time for recrimination. Anna was in danger, and every second he wasted brought her closer to harm. He summoned his most trusted men and began to plan. He would not go alone, whatever the note demanded. He would not risk Anna's life on Veronica's twisted sense of honor. But he would also not send an army that might spook her into doing something irreversible. A surgical strike, fast, precise, overwhelming. It was the only way. As his team assembled and preparations were made, Vincent allowed himself one moment of vulnerability. He pressed his palms against his desk and bowed his head, something that might have been a prayer escaping his lips. "Hold on, Anna. I'm coming." Back in the basement, Anna had finally freed her hands. She sat motionless for a moment, letting the circulation return to her fingers, then quickly bent to untie her ankles. The room had no obvious exits besides the door through which Veronica had entered, but there had to be something, some weakness, she could exploit. She searched every inch of the space, running her hands along the walls, testing the floor for loose boards. In the corner, hidden behind a stack of old crates, she found what she was looking for. A small window painted over and sealed with age, but potentially breakable. Anna grabbed a piece of broken wood from one of the crates and began to work at the window's frame. The paint was thick and stubborn, the wood swollen from years of moisture. But she was stubborn too, and desperation gave her strength she did not know she possessed. After what felt like hours, the frame began to give. She pried and pushed, her fingers scraped and bleeding, until finally the window popped free and cool night air rushed into the room. The opening was small, barely large enough for her to squeeze through, but Anna had not come this far to be stopped by inches. She hoisted herself up, ignoring the scrape of rough edges against her skin, and pulled herself through into the night. She emerged into an alley behind what appeared to be an abandoned industrial building. The moon was hidden behind clouds, and the only light came from distant street lamps. Anna had no idea where she was, But she knew she needed to put as much distance between herself and this place as possible. She began to run. At the same moment, Vincent's convoy was approaching the warehouse on Miller Road. He had deployed scouts ahead, and their reports confirmed what he suspected. Veronica had set up a trap, with armed men positioned at every entrance. It did not matter. He had faced worse odds before. "Go," he commanded, and his men moved like shadows, silent and deadly, neutralizing the guards before they could raise an alarm. Vincent entered the warehouse with his weapon drawn, his heart pounding with a fear he would never admit to anyone. He had built his empire on control, on the ability to predict and manipulate every variable. But love was a variable he could not control, and it had made him vulnerable in ways he had never anticipated. The warehouse was empty. Vincent's blood ran cold as he searched room after room, finding nothing but dust and shadows. Where was Anna? Had Veronica moved her? Was he already too late? Then his phone buzzed with an incoming message. "She escaped, but I will find her again." This is not over, Vincent. Relief and fury battled within him as he processed the words. Anna was alive. Anna had freed herself, but Veronica was still out there, still a threat. Fan. "Hout," he ordered his men. "Search the surrounding area. Find Anna before Veronica does." Anna had been running for what felt like miles when she finally allowed herself to stop. Her lungs were burning, her legs trembling with exhaustion. She had no idea where she was, but the buildings around her looked vaguely familiar. Industrial structures giving way to residential streets. The edge of Havenwood, perhaps. She stumbled toward the nearest house and pounded on the door, too desperate to care about. The hour. When it swung open to reveal an elderly man in pajamas, she nearly collapsed with relief. "Please," she gasped, "I need help. Please call Vincent Castellano." The man's eyes widened with recognition at the name, and he immediately ushered her inside. His wife appeared moments later, wrapping Anna in a blanket and pressing a glass of water into her hands. The call was made, and within 15 minutes, Vincent's car screeched to a halt outside the house. He burst through the door without knocking, his eyes wild with fear until they landed on Anna. Then he crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "I thought I lost you," he whispered against her hair. "I thought I was too late." Anna clung to him, trembling with the release of fear and adrenaline. "I got out. I freed myself." Vincent pulled back to look at her, and she saw something in his eyes that she had never seen before. Tears. "You are extraordinary," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "You are the strongest person I have ever known." Anna managed a weak smile. "I had good motivation." Vincent kissed her then, a kiss that spoke of desperation and relief, and a love too deep for words. When they finally broke apart, he cradled her face in his hands. "I am going to end this," he promised. "Veronica will never threaten you again. I swear it on my life." Anna believed him, and for the first time since she had been taken, she allowed herself to truly breathe. The ride back to Havenwood was silent but not uncomfortable. Anna leaned against Vincent's shoulder, his arm wrapped protectively around her. She did not know what would happen next, did not know how they would neutralize the threat that Veronica represented. But she knew that they would face it together, and together she was beginning to believe they could overcome anything. The weeks that followed were a blur of security protocols and strategic planning. Vincent transformed the mansion into a fortress, surrounding Anna with protection, while his team worked to dismantle what remained of Veronica's network. The blonde woman had vanished into the shadows, but Vincent's reach was long, and eventually, inevitably, she was found. Anna never learned the details of what happened when Vincent's men finally caught up with Veronica. She did not ask, and he did not offer. What mattered was that the threat was eliminated, and they could finally begin to build the life they both craved. True to his promise, Vincent arranged for private literacy tutoring for Anna. Twice a week, a patient teacher named Margaret came to the mansion and guided Anna through the mysteries of the written word. Progress was slow at first, frustrating in ways that made Anna want to throw books across the room. But gradually, letters began to form into words, and words into sentences, and sentences into entire worlds that had previously been locked away from her. The first book Anna read, cover to cover, was a children's story about a caterpillar's transformation into a butterfly. She finished it alone in the library one evening and wept, not from sadness, but from an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. When Vincent found her there, tears streaming down her face, he simply sat beside her and held her hand. "You did it," he said quietly. "You did what everyone said you could not do." Anna wiped her eyes and smiled. "It is just the beginning." And it was. Spring arrived with an explosion of color that transformed Havenwood into a postcard. Cherry blossoms lined the main street, and the air was thick with the scent of renewal. Anna had left her room above the diner and moved into the mansion, not as a guest, but as a partner, an equal in all things. She still worked at Rosie's several mornings a week, unwilling to abandon the woman who had first shown her kindness in this strange new world. But her afternoons were spent on a project that had become her passion, establishing a literacy program for adults in Havenwood and the surrounding communities. The idea had come to her during one of her tutoring sessions when Margaret mentioned how many people in America struggled with reading. Anna had looked at her in disbelief. She had spent her whole life believing she was alone in her deficiency, a singular failure in a world of competent people. To learn that millions shared her struggle was both heartbreaking and galvanizing. "If I can learn," she told Vincent that night, "so can they. But they need resources. They need support. They need someone who understands what they are going through." Vincent watched her speak, the passion in her voice igniting something in his chest. "What do you need?" "Everything," she replied. "Funding, space, teachers, a program designed specifically for adults who have been failed by the traditional system." Vincent smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his severe features. "Then you will have everything." True to his word, he provided whatever she required. The Literacy Center opened in a renovated building downtown, staffed by trained educators and volunteers. Anna led the program herself, drawing on her own experience to create a curriculum that was patient, non-judgmental, and effective. The first students were hesitant, ashamed, just as Anna had been, but she welcomed them with a warmth that immediately put them at ease. "There is no shame in being here," she told them on opening day. "The only shame would be giving up on yourself. You have already shown courage just by walking through that door." Word spread quickly and the program grew. Within 6 months, they had served over 100 adults, many of whom were reading independently for the first time in their lives. Local newspapers ran stories about the initiative, praising the mysterious benefactor whose funding made it possible. Vincent stayed carefully out of the spotlight, content to watch Anna shine. Their personal relationship deepened alongside their professional partnership. Vincent began the slow, painful process of transitioning his operations toward legitimacy, divesting from businesses that operated in the shadows and investing in enterprises that could withstand the light. It was not easy. There were threats from former associates, challenges from competitors who saw weakness in his transformation. But Vincent met each obstacle with the same cold efficiency that had built his empire. Only now it was directed toward building something better. Elena visited frequently, her approval of Anna evident in every interaction. The two women spent hours together, sharing recipes and stories and laughter that echoed through the mansion's halls. For Anna, who had never known her own mother, these moments were precious beyond measure. One evening in late summer, Vincent took Anna to the river park where she had first found peace in Havenwood. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, and the ducks that had become her friends paddled lazily through the water. "I have something to ask you," Vincent said, his voice unusually hesitant. Anna turned to face him, her heart already beating faster. "What is it?" Vincent reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. When he opened it, a diamond ring caught the dying light and scattered it into 1,000 tiny rainbows. "Anna Moreno," he said, his voice steady despite the vulnerability in his eyes. "When you came to Havenwood, I thought I knew who I was. I thought I knew. what I wanted from life. But you showed me how wrong I was. You showed me that power without love is meaningless. You showed me that the strongest thing a person can do is accept help, is trust, is hope. He took a deep breath. I am not a perfect man. I have done things that I am not proud of. But with you, I want to be better. I want to build something that will last, something we can be proud of. I want to wake up every morning knowing that you are beside me and fall asleep. Every night grateful for the gift of your presence. He knelt before her, the most powerful man in Havenwood brought to his knees by love. Will you marry me? Anna looked at the man before her, this complex, tortured, beautiful soul who had seen her at her lowest and loved her anyway. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, from a rain-soaked bus station in Millbrook to this moment of impossible grace. Yes, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Yes, Vincent. 1,000 times yes. He slid the ring onto her finger and rose to embrace her, their lips meeting in a kiss that sealed their promise to each other. Around them the world continued its eternal turning, but for these two people, time had stopped. They were married in the spring, on the grounds of the mansion that had become their home. The ceremony was intimate, attended only by those who truly mattered. Elena, Rosie, Margaret, the staff who had become family, and a small group of trusted friends. Anna wore a gown of ivory silk that reminded her of the wildflowers that grew near her childhood home, and Vincent wore a suit that matched his eyes. When they exchanged vows, both cried, and neither was ashamed. The years that followed were filled with the quiet joys of a life well lived. The literacy program expanded to 3 locations, serving hundreds of students and receiving recognition from state officials. Anna became a respected figure in Havenwood, known not for her connection to Vincent, but for her own contributions to the community. Vincent completed his transition to legitimate business, channeling his considerable resources into ventures that created jobs and opportunities for the region. The shadows of his past never fully disappeared, but they no longer defined him. He was not just the former Mafia boss. He was a husband, a philanthropist, a man who had chosen a different path. Elena passed away peacefully in her sleep 3 years after the wedding, surrounded by her family and at peace with the world. Her final words to Anna were simple but profound. Thank you for giving me my son back. Rosie eventually retired, passing the diner to a young couple who had once been students in Anna's literacy program. The circle of giving continued, each act of kindness rippling outward to touch lives that would never know its origin. And through it all, Anna and Vincent remained anchored to each other, their love growing deeper with each passing season. They faced challenges, as all couples do, but they faced them together, drawing strength from their partnership and their shared commitment to something greater than themselves. On their 10th anniversary, they returned to the river park at sunset, just as they had on the night of their engagement. The ducks still paddled through the water, the sky still blazed with color, and the world seemed filled with the same sense of infinite possibility. Do you ever regret it? Anna asked, leaning her head against Vincent's shoulder. Regret what? Any of it. Leaving your old life behind, choosing this path. Vincent was quiet for a moment, considering the question with the seriousness it deserved. I regret the harm I caused before I knew better, he said finally. I regret the years I spent believing that power was the only thing that mattered, but I do not regret a single moment of the life we have built together. You showed me that there is another way to be strong, and that is a gift I can never repay. Anna smiled and intertwined her fingers with his. We saved each other, she said softly. Yes, Vincent agreed. We did. They sat together as the sun sank below the horizon, 2 people who had been broken by the world, but had found in each other the courage to be whole again. Their story was not a fairy tale, not really. There was no magic, no prophecy, no supernatural intervention. There was only love, stubborn and resilient, refusing to be defeated by circumstance. And in the end, that love had been enough, more than enough. It had been everything. If you have watched this far, it is because you liked this story. Leave a comment saying, I watched this far, so I can get to know you and see who really enjoys the stories here on the channel. Before you go, hit that subscribe button if you have not already. This channel is a home for stories that remind us of the power of hope, resilience, and love. By subscribing, you become part of a community that believes in second chances and happy endings. Do not forget to give this video a like if it touched your heart. That simple click helps more people discover these stories and find the same comfort and inspiration that brought you here. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message today, share this video with them. You never know whose life you might change with a story about courage, transformation, and the redemptive power of love. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. And thank you for being part of this journey. Until next time.